Hey, what it do, YouTube? It's your boy Q, and welcome back to Q's Challengers Corner, where we usually talk everything NA Challengers, results from the previous week, predictions for the next week, and I've even thought about doing some power rankings. I'm just not sure if that's something worth doing every week, so YouTube, if that's something you guys would love, let me know down in those comments below. But I figured with this next week coming up, first off, we do have a little break week here, but with this next week coming up, it's basically the halfway point, so I figured let's do something a little different. Let's kind of dissect how the season's going thus far, who we might be seeing the 8 teams going into that mid-season invitational. I figured who better to do that with than when one of the best hosts in the Valorant game, quite possibly my favorite person on the NA Challengers casting team. Just promise not to tell anybody else that, all right, for me, buddy. Tanner Metro, how the heck are you doing, buddy? Really appreciate you taking some time to sit down and talk some Valorant.
Yeah, I'm good. I appreciate the kind words. I'm good. I'm always down to talk Valorant, especially challengers, because it's the first time that a lot of these players have been able to have like the type of structure that we have for this one. So I think challengers is so important. I'm super excited that we've got this format now this year.
So before we really start digging in and talking Valorant, I want to talk Tanner Metro for just a second, because I'm kind of curious. I'm always kind of curious to see what it is that gets people into the casting coverage side of esports. Sometimes I've found that it's people have previously like been competitors, right? But maybe it's not necessarily the game they cast or compete in or they cover now. Or some people who just kind of had that attraction to casting and a linked passion to gaming. So what kind of got you here? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I kind of just stumbled upon this. I've been a fan of esports since 2012-ish, so
okay.
what, 10 years, 11 years now. I started with League of Legends. I feel like that is the obvious answer to like how people got into esports. And so I watched a lot of League of Legends, and then it kind of branched out into, the Counter-Strikes, the Rocket Leagues, whatever it may be. And there was a really small game called Battle Right. And if you're not familiar, it was like League of Legends if you took out all of the minions and you took out all of the turrets, and you literally just fought each other. It was a 3v3 or a 2v2 top-down just battle arena game. It was very cool, very fast-paced, different characters, different abilities. You had support characters, and so I was like just messing around, playing it, and kind of casting, commentating over the games that like after I had died or whatever.
Right.
Just like, hey man, you sound pretty good doing that. Like, have you ever thought about being a caster? And at that point, I don't know, this is probably like 2019 or 2020. It clicked that, the voices that you hear over the broadcasts, that's a job that people have.
Right.
That kind of just pushed me down that route. And then I just started doing different games. And fortunately, Valorant came out at a good time. I got super lucky. I hopped on like a community broadcast stream for Nerd Street back in the day when First Strike was happening. And that kind of got me to where I'm at today.
Cool. So, as far as when we start talking NA challengers here, I kind of prelude at the top of the video. We normally talk as far as predictions and stuff, but we're heading to that halfway point of the split, and I do feel as much as maybe teams like the Guard and M80 have kind of shown, at least now they appear to be more kind of head above the competition, right? Rip to the rest of Group B, at least for now. But behind them, I think a lot of people would say the rest of NA challengers, when you look at both groups, it's kind of muddy. I mean, technically G2's 2-0, right? But they dropped the map to FaZe, who dropped the map to Turtle Troop, who hasn't dropped the map or who hasn't won against anyone else, right? And at times even looked like they were struggling against Breakthrough last week. So removing the record, Tanner, tell me, is G2 the best team thus far in Group A, or does the eyeball test tell you something different right now? Because I don't know how to call it.
Yeah, it's so hard because I feel like Shazam kind of has this stigma that's been following him with slow starts and really taking time to get the ball rolling with the team. And it gets a whole lot harder when you only have
5 weeks.
Of you have 5 weeks, and then you only brought one player with you, right? So the only person that he's been comfortable with, or the most comfortable with, is Dapper. And so he's working with 2 players who are comfortable together from V1, but not necessarily, the most comfortable under Shazam just yet. And then they have that Young Gun and Oxy. And I think there's a lot of moving parts. I think, again, removing the record and kind of some of the negatives that we've seen from this team, I think it speaks very well for them to be winning the games or winning the series that they're winning because of the adversity that they've kind of faced in kind of having these players slapped from all over the place, a different coach, which I mean, Shazam's not even really used to working with a coach in Valorant at the very least. He's always been the guy who did everything until Sentinels had, the small stint of coaches. So, uh, I think they look all right. I think they'll definitely need some more time. I don't think it's enough time. I guess once we get to playoffs, time will tell, ultimately. But I think as far as Group A goes, G2 is really sitting at the top. We saw Shopify drop a series, excuse me, to Oxygen, which is super awkward. So
because Oxygen dropped a breakthrough, so it makes the whole thing in the middle behind them so weird, right?
It's a scramble. It's Group A is 100% a scramble, but I do think we can confidently say that G2 is at the top, unless Shopify, like that Oxygen loss was a crazy wake up call. I think maybe they underestimated the Oxygen Esports squad. But G2 looks pretty good, and it's only going to look better as time goes on. Like you said, only having 5 weeks, but having this break in kind of like the mid portion of the season,
right?
The G2's got a lot of time to continue to look better.
And then I want to make sure I'm getting this right. And then this week, I mean, they do play Oxygen. I would imagine that probably will tell us a lot, especially with the Oxygen squad coming off that game last week, right?
Yeah, so I think if anybody's going to upset anybody, it would be Oxygen. I thought maybe Turtle Troop, Breakthrough, obviously strong as well, but it just goes to show that, not having structure behind 5 incredible players stinks. That doesn't feel great, and Breakthrough is kind of the result of that. But yes, I think if G2 can beat Oxygen, I think it really is smooth sailing. Obviously, there's going to be, a bump in the road for having to play Shopify eventually. But I think by that point, I don't even know when it is, and it looks like it's week 5 that they play. So it's already going to be smooth sailing for G2 at that point. I think that game they'll be
well oiled and running, right?
Exactly. Yep. And be ready for playoffs. 4-0 at that point. If they drop a series, not that big of a deal because they're looking ahead at playoffs and bigger and greener pastures.
Playoffs? No, yeah, I definitely feel you as far as with that there. So we had 6 teams, right, that were invited to challengers. And then, of the 6 teams that were invited, I want to ask, there's one team that currently sits at that negative round differential, which is going to be TSM. If you're a TSM fan right now, is there anything to be concerned about? And because sure, the one loss was to M80, who most would consider is the second best team in the region, right? But even when you look back to week 1, they didn't look the best against Mad Lions, right? So I don't feel like there's much to write home about them there. Is there anything to be concerned about for them right now, sitting in 4th in Group B?
Yeah, it's definitely, it doesn't look good. As a TSM fan myself, it really sucks to see them do bad. Like I said, I started with League of Legends, and TSM was my team in League of Legends. So it doesn't bode well. I think the best part about this group, which has been labeled, the group of death, is that if you're TSM and really maybe Mad Lions, you're fighting for, and Disguised as well, you're fighting for 3rd and 4th. Like that's it. There's no way you're touching 1st or 2nd because of the Garden M80.
Right.
So there is signs of hope as far as like a playoff run goes, but it is very scary. Not that TSM was cream of the crop last year,
right?
But they made changes. They made a lot of changes, right? They moved their team to Texas. Everybody's living together. They just bring nature on board. They make some changes in the roster, and yeah, they're in a very scary spot, and it's very scary, I think, for like the Valorant ecosystem, because we are starting to see teams pull out of esports, and I would hate to see TSM do that. I don't think they would, because it's Riot, League of Legends, Valorant. They know that Riot Games is good for it, and that this is a good place to be.
And I think that potential of like the end goal, right? Because if you get out of this, then you get that it's a 2-year contract, right? Guaranteed. If you win the whole shebang as far as an ascension. So I think that should be enough to at least hopefully keep TSM nipping at the bud. I would hope. Maybe.
Yeah, they just, yes, as far as an org goes, but you have to have the team that can compete to do it. So they definitely, I think they have strong players. I keep looking at Nature for this one, but like I watched Nature back in the day when I was casting for Esports Arena or whatever, the small weekly Monday tournaments they were doing. And I remember thinking that he is so strong of an individual player. So they have it. They showed it, I think, when they played the guard in the Tarek Ludwig Invitational, right? I think that one went 3 maps, and I was really excited to see TSM coming into Challengers, but yeah, they kind of have just fallen flat. I think it's easy to overlook some of the lesser, quote unquote, lesser teams. Mad Lions, they weren't even signed until they just got into challengers.
Right.
Obviously, or Esports is, probably another team that can be taken fairly lightly because of the results that we've seen from them. But I hope that's something that we get away from these teams. And I think the teams that we're seeing do well.
You said OR, right?
Yeah, OR. Yeah.
I mean, they played at the Garden M80. I mean, what can you really do to start your season, right? I mean,
that is true. That is true. But to that point, the way that the Garden M80 played those teams just shows you why they're the best, right? They don't take those guys lightly. They jump into the server and they just whip it on, and they're plus 31 and plus 25 in round differential, right? They just beat the brakes off these guys. So, the teams like Shopify or TSM that are not taking these teams incredibly seriously are getting punished for it, right? Having a really bad series against Mad Lions and then obviously losing to M80, that's sure
to be expected, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So TSM definitely have to figure it out. They are in a rough spot right now. Playoffs contention, sure, maybe, but
that's like fighting though.
Yeah, 100%.
So we talked about a little bit the 6 invited teams. So of the 6 qualified teams thus far in the split, are there any teams that have like really surprised you, or do you kind of feel like the qualified teams have kind of done what you were expecting them to do? I definitely think, as far as for me, I kind of like the way Disguise looked through qualifiers. I think they definitely look pretty solid thus far through the split. And even despite being on the outside looking in on far as in Group A, I do think Breakthrough has some promise as well. I'm kind of curious as far as, your thoughts on some of those qualified teams.
Yeah, the two that you mentioned, Disguise and Breakthrough, I thought were really surprising. Oxygen as well. Oxygen getting a big win over Shopify, even if that's their only win that they get.
Right.
Verno is the only returning player from Oxygen Academy. This Oxygen Esports team is kind of a completely different team. So for them to have done what they've done and kind of show their strengths and their prowess as one of the signed orgs that had to qualify through the like the LCQs, or I think they qualified in opens. But yeah, so I think Oxygen really stands out. Breakthrough stands out to me because it's that roster of incredible misfits where you're looking at the Protos, you're looking at the Thieves, you're looking at the Sims, and you're thinking, these guys, it's crazy that there were times, I mean, even now, that they're unsigned and that they weren't actually ever playing, right? A Proto at one point was just posting on Twitter. He's hitting crazy Sheriff clips. And so that's why that Breakthrough roster stands out to me. I would love for them to get a bit more maybe structure. I don't know if they're working with anybody specifically in way of coaching. Maybe they can. I know Tanny's helping the team.
But a little bit more structure as far as what you think as far as pushes in and as far as retakes and things, or just overall gameplay, or is there something in particular that really stands out to you?
It's not so much the. Yeah, I guess I hate that this is the answer all the time. They just need more time. They just need more time because they have the players. They have the staff behind them.
Right.
And again, like Brock, a Proto, Sim, Thief, Flya, those are all 5 names that everybody should know for one reason or another. So yeah, they just need more time. It is unfortunate though for teams like this who are unsigned and it's all kind of coming out of pocket. They have to do other things in life and then also compete. These guys are really on the chopping block. They don't have that time is not allotted to them like it is for G2 where they're getting salaried. They can put as much time on the day that they want to perfect certain things. So it stinks, but yeah, Breakthrough is definitely a team that I was expecting to do well. And then Disguised is the other team for me that I'm very happy to see them doing well. I know that there's kind of like love-hate for Steel in the community because of the way that he is as a player and as an IGL, but I love that he's kind of our last standing old head in the scene that is really continuing to make a push. Everybody else is not doing anything, or I guess obviously like FNS and players like that, but Steel's not giving up. And I think that speaks. Well, I think you could look back at all of the bad things that people have said about Steel as an IGL. But when you see what he's doing today, with Disguised Toast's team, you can say every bad experience that you had with that guy came from the heart and was for the good because he's still doing it, right? He wasn't just being an a-hole before.
Right.
just to be mean. He meant that because he wants to compete at the highest level, and whatever he said to you that hurt your feelings was separating, maybe them from the highest level. So now you look at what Steele's doing, and I think you just look back at anything that anybody said bad about him as a teammate and think, I mean, the guy just wants it. And it came from a place of passion. It came from a place of heart. So I really like that Disguise is doing well just because of that story alone. Like, I want Steele to do well. So I'm happy they're sitting where they're at.
I
looking
feel like
a little
every
bit
esport has to have that villain, right? The one that's
yes.
like the IGL that pushes maybe that boundary just a little bit too much. I mean, I know over on our channel we cover Apex a little bit too, and one of the first one that pops to mind is if you either love Hal or you hate Hal because of the way he talks to this team. So I feel like it's the same thing over in the Valorant scene with this, right?
100%. Yeah, that when you started going into that, Hal was the first person that popped into my mind that the comms are hectic. He's yelling at you. He might have just said your play was stupid, but
it probably was a stupid play. And
exactly, it was a stupid. Yep, exactly. So yeah, that's Steele, for Valorant, and yeah, it's very cool to see them. So yeah, Disguised, Oxygen, and Breakthrough. Like I said, if Oxygen don't win another game, that upset over Shopify, I think, was huge for the careers of the young players that they have.
So, now we're at this halfway point, and we know at the end of the 5 weeks, the whole goal is that we have 8 teams qualifying for this midseason invitational at the end of the split, right? We currently have 3 teams right now that are sitting 0-2. Now in Challengers Corner over here, last week I had predicted OR Esports probably going 0-2, kind of like you and I were talking about. You get the draw. Sometimes that's just how it is. Yeah. Sometimes, though, I do feel like you learn the most from those beatings. So if you can take those back-to-back losses and truly learn from them, they do have a chance to kind of make a run here. But I was curious as far as for you, of any of the 0-2 teams, so we're talking OR Esports, Mad Lions, Turtle Troop, do you feel like any of these 3 teams, and if have a run to be have the ability to make a run at the playoffs, and if so, who has the best potential to?
So unfortunately, I have to write off Turtle Troop because they just made changes to their roster.
Yep.
And who knows? Okay. I had tweeted the other day, will the real 100 Thieves please stand up? Because that's exactly what 100 Thieves did. They dropped their roster after week 2, and then they just looked really bad for the rest of the time. So Turtle Troop, unfortunately, I have to write off, although I love all the guys over there.
Right. Although I think we can agree that Squirtle Squad slaps more than Turtle Troop, right?
Yes, 100% Squirtle Squad slaps more. I wish they could.
You can understand why they didn't, but man, if you could, that would.
And maybe that was the missing link. Maybe it just didn't feel right as the Turtle Troop. But either way, I as far as the remaining teams, if anybody, the remaining 0-2 teams, OR Esports and Mad Lions, if anybody has a chance, I would lean towards OR Esports.
Yeah.
Just because they have the quote unquote easiest bracket ahead of them, right? They already played the guard. They already played M80. You would know that by looking at their round differential. They are minus 35, right? It's not great. So they played.
It could be worse though, playing those 2 teams. They didn't look awful against teams who have dominated everyone they've played against thus far. So that's a positive, right?
Yeah, a huge positive. Man, the thing that stinks, and I think this changed from last year, is the tiebreakers used to be head to head, and now it used to be head-to-head round differential and then something else. I believe round differential is before head-to-head now.
That sounds right. And I remember the first time I was reading it over, I was wondering why that was. That sounds right.
So that, is daunting as an OR Esports fan, if you are an OR Esports fan, to see that your team is minus 35 and, they still have to play a few games, and they're probably not going to smash Disguised, TSM, or Mad Lions. But they do have as easy as the bracket would get. Mad Lions, I believe, still have to play both of them, I think, right? M80 and the guard. Yeah. So Mad Lions are probably eyeballing 2 losses. And then they play OR Esports, which could go really either way. Mad Lions probably takes that one. I think they look strong. I think OR Esports I
feel like that'll be a momentum-based game probably, right? Because that's the end of the season. If OR Esports is running versus M80 coming off 2 shellackins, it could be a little bit different,
Yeah, and that very true. That is very true. I also think Is that okay? And that's our week 5 matchup,
right?
So that could be a really cool storyline of, hey, OR Esports, it's in your hands, right? The ball is in your court. If you beat Mad Lions, you will qualify for playoffs. Otherwise, Mad Lions are just looking to play upset. That could be a really cool week 5. Yeah, out of the 3 teams, I guess the TLDR on all of that, OR Esports, I think has probably the clearest route, unless Turtle Troop got Asuna on loan. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
I don't know what Turtle Troop are doing, unfortunately.
All right. So, I know you're a super busy guy. I don't want to take up too much more of your time here, Tanner. So, before we move on, I have a question for you, though. How's your sleep? I mean, I know sometimes you're in front of, monitors and running right before you're going to bed. Probably in the best, right?
Yeah, it could be better. It could be better. Yeah. That's for sure.
All right, cool. YouTube, how about you guys? Like, how many of y'all are like me and suffer from like headaches after long hours in front of the screens and stuff? Yeah. I want y'all to know that GamerAdvantage is a leader in impactful eyewear technology that has been proven to help you sleep better, focus more, all without distorting color or comfort. All right, it relieves headaches and eye strain, all while fitting comfortably under a headset. Why do I always say headache? Man, it kills it every time. Make sure you guys can stay in the game longer with GamerAdvantage, though, y'all. Link is always going to be down in that description below. Y'all already know I'm always keen to have GamerAdvantage sitting on my face whenever y'all are ready to. Use code YoBoyCue at checkout. Saves you that additional 10%. All right, now we are at the end of at the end of challengers, the goal is for one of these teams, right, Tanner, to hopefully earn the chance at a franchise spot. And I feel like thus far, the Guard truly has shown that they're, I feel like, head above the rest. I feel like they'll really get a chance to prove that, obviously, once they play M80. But even when you look thus far, right, you mentioned earlier they looked good in that Ludwig Tarek Invitational. Granted, I guess so did TSM. So I guess, take that for what it's worth, right?
Yeah.
But I'm curious, do you feel like there's a different team that people should be keeping an eye on, whether it's M80 or maybe even someone that you've heard of through the grapevine from another region that might be able to come in and steal that chance?
Yeah, I think, so the scariest thing right now for me is I do think that the Guard look head and shoulders above the rest. I am very excited. Again, another week 5 matchup that is the Guard and M80. Yep. Very excited to see that one. I think that's going to give us a good showing of, can the Guard kind of withstand? The M80 has insane fragging power, right? With that ghost core between Koala and Nismo. Something just got released from Knights the other day, and Koala has like insane impact for his team. So that is going to be a super explosive matchup, but I think it's going to set us up for the rematch that is probably going to be inevitable once we get into the playoffs. So I really like that. The first matchup in Group E, I'm probably not putting too much weight into it. I want to see them play again in playoffs because surely they do meet again. Right. But I do think the Guard look pretty head and shoulders above the rest. The thing that scares me, though, is the Guard are not a team that like to make changes. They like to play the meta their way, which it works. Right. But I mean, if we've seen from anything from any of the other regions, people are starting to experiment and people are starting to do different things, and it's working, right? How many maps are we starting to see Harbor played and
I love the Harbor pick so much. I love
100%. I'm all in for the Harbor pick. So I think the Guard's worst enemy is themselves and kind of being stagnant. But as far as qualifying through, at least in North America, I think the Guard do look head and shoulders above the rest. The team that is maybe going to be able to upset the Guard, I would say M80 just because of firepower alone, or maybe G2 with Shazam's brain and getting to experiment and finding ways, looking at what we've seen in the international tournament and saying like, hey, this is working. Let's go ahead and implement this, because I think everybody knows that the Guard won't. So M80, firepower, G2, upset, and kind of just outplay in way of like the compositions they bring.
Right.
But it really is the Guard just standing atop their castle walls and defending from literally everybody else, which is cool. I think that's what the Guard were meant to do when they joined the Challengers circuit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was kind of the script from the beginning, and thus far they've looked pretty good. You had mentioned, I mean, obviously the round differential speaks for itself as far as the first 2 games, how dominant they have looked here. So I want to ask one more question here as far as some teams to look out for. I want to requalify this question kind of as I go along, because I feel like it would otherwise lead to the same team. So a couple weeks have gone by here, right? And obviously we know some teams we want to keep an eye out for. You know, we're talking about the M80s, the guards, you had even mentioned earlier, you know, is G2 going to be able to solidify that spot at the top of Group A? Do you feel that there's a team that hasn't made the pop that you were looking for that you still expect to see over the course of these next 3 weeks? And I'm more so looking in the Group A because of how muddy it is over there, especially also because we already talked about OR Esports in Group B. So is there one team that you feel like you haven't really seen the performance you were expecting heading into the season, or into the split, I should say?
You know, that team for me, and I think we've seen the performances, they just need that last little oomph to get over the hill. That team for me is Breakthrough. I think they have 5 strong players, a strong coach. They put up a really close series with G2, the team that's at the top of their group.
Right.
And again, although they are kind of backed into a corner because of the time hack they've been given, we do have more time. And because Group A is so muddy, you don't have to have a perfect record to make it out, right? We have, what is it, 4 teams at 1-1, a team at 0-2, and a team at 2-2. So really anything can happen. I think Breakthrough will live up to their name and probably break through the mud and find themselves sitting pretty comfortably in the playoffs. And then at that point, you've already proven yourself. You made it to the playoffs, right? You didn't qualify for the partnered leagues, but you can start to play with, you know, without a care in the world. You can start to play like you have nothing to lose.
Seriously, at that point. I mean, because you have gone from qualifying to from the outside looking in. So then at that point, I guess the question would be, if Breakthrough does break into that top 4, gets into that midseason invitational, who's only left on the outside looking in?
Oh, dang, that's tough. That's tough because Oxygen are just this weird hidden gem that, like, to get the win over Shopify, a team that's been together for a really long time, that's frightening for the rest of the signed teams. And I don't know if I've completely bought into the FaZe Clan hype. So I think there's a world, maybe after week 3, it'll be a bit more telling, but I think there's a world where FaZe Clan kind of gets the boot. The only thing that I think stops that from happening is Baby Bay literally dragging the rest of FaZe Clan, kicking and screaming across the finish line. But I think there are going to be games and there are going to be series where that's not enough. And for FaZe Clan, it doesn't get a whole lot easier, right? The team that they play in Turtle Troop, that was going to be their easiest game, you know. And
remind me, their roster got put together really late, didn't it?
So they picked up their 5th really late. Rossi was playing for the Nation in qualifiers and then stopped to get picked up by FaZe after the Nation didn't qualify. And they had 5 days or something to kind of integrate Rossi into the team. So yeah, there's definitely there are some moving pieces that are still working on kind of getting smoothed over for FaZe Clan. So yeah, it's not the prettiest. That is literally this Group A. I didn't even realize until now that it's Oxygen with 4 new players in Verno. It's FaZe Clan who picked up their 5th literally on the day of the tournament. Shopify is the only team that has kind of stuck together, and even they made some changes. So this is the group of changes, and then we have the group of death. And I mean, the group of changes is a very scary place to be for everybody.
It makes things really. I got a question. Do they reseed things up after the invitational, or are they stuck in the same groups?
I'm not too sure. I would hope that they switch it up. I would hope
for a couple of those teams in Group B, you'd kind of hope for their sake, especially because I think if Disguise continue looking really good, Group B becomes a race for 4th if you're trying to qualify for the midseason invitational. Because I don't think Disguised at 1-1, I don't think that record really does them justice, especially because you look at TSM's at a negative 14 and it's still a 1-1 as well. I think it lets you know how good Disguised has looked even in their losses.
Yeah, and they have a pretty easy week 3 playing OR Esports, and then their next matchup is M80. So, which I think the brains of Disguised, they might not have all the firepower, although they do have really strong players. Exalt is somebody they look at, super strong. Clear is also really strong. I talked to Clear before the season started, and they were just like, I have nothing to lose, really. Basically, I don't play with any more pressure. My team just allows me to play the way that I want to play. And that's terrifying because we know that Zoomers take over the scene, you know? So I think Disguise could find that upset over M80, which will also then kind of cement the guard as maybe the best team just because they beat Disguised and they didn't falter against a strong-ish tier 2 team. So, yeah, I mean, Disguised are, I think, definitely my actual dark horse for the whole thing. Breakthrough, obviously, that team that I want to see do well from Group A, though.
I feel it. So, look, I'm about to get ready to get you up out of here, fam. I really appreciate you taking some time to sit down, chat some Valorant, and talk some NA challengers here. But before we do get you up out of here, for people wanting to keep up with you as far as where they can find you at, social medias, content, let the people know.
Yeah, I'm Tanner_Metro everywhere. If you ever get dominated in a game like Warzone or Apex or something of the sort by somebody named Scrawny IRL, that's also me, because I think that name is super funny. But yeah, Tanner_Metro on Twitter, on Twitch, Caster Metro on TikTok, but I don't really post there anymore, so I apologize. I'm really bad at
I do TikTok of the one source, like I just can't get on, man. I feel it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to keep up with it all. But yeah, this was awesome, man. I love talking challengers. I just love. I could gush about this all day, man. I could gush about this all day.
Well, you know what? Maybe towards the end of the split or something before midseason invitational, we'll have to get you back up on here and we'll have to run it back. So I definitely felt like the conversation really went good. Again, I appreciate you for taking time and chatting with little old me, taking some time and chatting challengers. And but I'm gonna let you get up on out of here, my friend. But before we get out of here, YouTube, y'all, I want y'all to remember that normally we do release these Q's Challengers corners like a day or two before games, but we do have this week off here. So reminder that technically week off for Challengers, which means that week 3 will be starting up next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, which means we're going to be doing those same thing we always do, watch parties right on back over here. Monday will be a little late to switch over because we're doing the community watch parties as far as with lock-in, but then we'll be starting right on up as far as once Sao Paulo is done. Just like our Apex style interviews over here, if you guys enjoy this for Valorant, do me a favor, hit that like button and leave the comments down below of who you would like to hear from, because one, those two things help me out with the YouTube algorithm, not gonna lie. But you'd actually be surprised how many players, casters, coaches, how many coaches and even like hosts like Tanner were like more than willing to sit down and chat Valorant. So let me know who y'all would love to chat to. I'm always down to shoot my shot because you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And of course, if y'all want to make sure y'all are right back here for more weekly Valorant news, updates, and watch parties, hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on. And until we catch y'all back over here, man, don't forget, with everything crazy going on in the world today, be true, be you, be sincere, game hard and love harder. All right, y'all. That's Tanner. I'm Q. Signing out. If you ain't show something, you just don't wanna be. You wanna be me, but you will